In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about George Russell's beautiful pole position lap, FP3, and all of the qualifying sessions. A lot to talk about with regards to technique, the pressure that Lando was under, the changing conditions from yesterday as well. If you're interested in what my thoughts are, definitely keep watching. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I hope you're going well. My name is Martin and I'm a specialist technical coach and mentor for open Formula drivers. Let's start with FP3 and Oscar Piastri's little slap against the wall of champions around the midpoint of FP3. Technically, I can't say like he did anything super wrong, just went in there a little bit quick as he goes for the power with the steering lock combined. Then the rear comes around and he just slaps that in the wall. For the damage to the car and the impact of the weekend from the damage point of view, I don't think it was heaps. But as per Monaco, when Oscar just put the front wing into the wall at Saint-Devote, what does this do for your confidence going into qualifying? It's been on the back foot slightly up to this point, then a little touch with the wall. These things start to add up and you do start to doubt yourself a little bit and say, am I on the right track this weekend? Am I doing the right things, building myself a weekend? He actually mentioned after the Monaco Grand Prix that front wing in the wall at Saint-Devote did pull him back a little bit, and that might be the reason he didn't get pole. So I was curious to see and follow his progress throughout the weekend and throughout qualifying. I'd argue that P3 was not a bad recovery for Oscar there. Now, one of the implications of that red flag and the closure of that track for 10 minutes, I feel like that impacted Leclerc the most. Remember, he missed all of yesterday due to that clumsy crash at turn 3 and 4. Now he's got a red flag in FP3. He needs every single lap and every single minute of this FP3 session. The last thing you want is a red flag. It means he had to sit out that 10 minutes as well. So I thought that Charles did actually a really good session in FP3, despite everything we just said, despite missing the yesterday, Friday practice, despite having that hiccup in the middle of FP3 as well. I thought he did a really good job to just come today and deliver his best efforts. As it turns out, I think he did make a decent mistake in qualifying, but that's to be expected without the laps that he did. It just goes to show how important building the weekend is and how important qualifying is as well. Let's bring up the Q1 results then and start to have a look at qualifying and what happened. Obviously, this session was characterized by Alex Albon's engine cover. As he goes down the back straight, it just pretty much blows off and explodes. And so, yeah, the session was characterized by that because we had that red flag in the middle of the session. The biggest call out for me was Colapinto versus Gasly. This is a big shout out for Franco. I think that was a solid, strong lap time, and he should be happy with that. Listening to Pierre afterwards, he was talking about like not making any big particular mistake, just that he didn't get the preparation right. He didn't get the lap time right. So if you're a Colapinto fan, that's great because it means like you're there on merit. That's a 10 versus 20, which means Gasly will start last, will he? After Tsunoda's got the 10 place drop, does he not? So yeah, Gasly starting at the back. Lawson, Stroll, Carlos Sainz, and Bortoleto. Carlos Sainz was the other big story, claiming that he was impeded into the 6 and 7 chicane, which absolutely he was. We're going to bring up the telemetry now to have a look at Sainz, how much lap time he lost, and Gasly to see where those lap time losses were. Alrighty, let's start with Gasly Colapinto. So Gasly the 12.6, Colapinto the 12.2. What I'm looking at is the delta here, and I'm looking to see, was there one big mistake or was it just general bleeding of lap time throughout the lap? We go into turn 1 and 2, and as we come out of turn 2, Gasly's already half a tenth down. Through the 3 and 4 chicane, Gasly's 1.5 tenths down. No change through 6 and 7. He really gets kind of hammered a little bit by Colapinto through 8 and 9, a big jump. Now Gasly's 4 tenths down. After the hairpin, I think he remains 3.5 tenths. That's fine. And through the final chicane, Colapinto finds a little bit more time, ends up 4.5 tenths down. So no, this was not a mistake by Pierre. This was, a Q2 appearance by Franco on merit. And I think that's noteworthy. That's a good job by Franco this weekend. And we need to check Carlos Sainz versus Alex Albon because I just want to see at this corner here, how much did this cost him? This is where he was impeded. I think it was by one of the V-carbs. And it's interesting because I see like a few jumps throughout the lap where he was losing time to Alex. Yes, there was a delta jump there. What was that worth? He was behind 1.6 tenths. And after coming through that chicane being impeded just over 3 tenths. So that's, yeah, nearly 0.2 of a second that he's lost through there. We'll have to check the results again and see that if he was 0.2 better, would he have made it into Q2? So Carlos Sainz on the 12.3. Give him another 0.2. He probably ends up at a 12.1. Yes, he was comfortably in. He'd be around Alex Albon. They'd be stacked 8 and 9. So yes, that impeding, whilst it was very small, this is actually a very close grid. You got 12.0, 12.0, 12.0, 12.0, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. So it's very tight from, let's say, P5 down to P17 where Carlos was. There's only 0.3 in it. So yes, that 0.2 did cost Carlos a shot at Q2. Q2 results on the screen in front of you. For me, this session was really characterized by the medium compound tire. I think this is where it made a case for itself to be used in Q3. And yeah, I think we saw that with George Russell's lap as well. Good lap by George. Unfortunate for Franco, he did get kicked out in this session. Yuki Tsunoda kicked out as well with Hulkenberg, Behrman, and Ocon. So no big stories here, I don't feel like. That all looks pretty standard to me. This is a top 10 that we've been very familiar with up to this point so far. But yeah, I wanted to call out that this was where I thought that the medium was the way to go come Q3. Let's talk about the Q3 session and Lando's first run and his first mistake. I think this is where the Q3 fell apart for Lando because he was on the back foot after making that little mistake into the final chicane. We spoke about rear instability on entry to the corners, which we pretty much saw all day yesterday. Pretty much entry into all of the heavy braking zones, 6 and 7 chicane, 8 and 9 chicane, and final chicane. This one for Lando at the worst possible time in Q3 at the end of his lap. George spoke about the wind changing direction today and the impact that that was having into the final chicane as well, and said like you had to take it a bit easy to final chicane because you had a tailwind coming down there as well. So I'm not sure whether Lando made the appropriate allowances for that, but the implication was that now he's under pressure again in his final run in Q3 after building what I thought was a pretty decent weekend. That was a costly mistake. Again, not because of the lap time that he could have got on that lap or anything. No. The confidence going into your final run in Q3. Then he starts getting radio messages. I'm not sure who it was, but someone came over and said, Lando, we need to focus on the line and do not over push the braking zones. Whilst I think that's technically correct information, I always argue that the line is the single most important thing. It's not late braking, it's not early throttle, it's not this or that with the steering. The line that you take, particularly over the curbs here this weekend, is key. And to not over push the braking, I think is good advice. But I'm curious, who was that came over the radio? What does that do for Lando's psychology to hear something so basic at that point in time? Why are the engineers coaching drivers? I mean, there's a lot that you could read into such a thing. I thought it was an interesting radio message. Again, I'm not sure who it was. It didn't sound like Will. So if anyone knows who it was, yeah, leave it in the comment section for me below. But I feel like, I don't know whether that such a basic radio message helps Lando refocus on the basics, or is it so basic that then Lando thinks, now they're babying me? I'm not sure how Lando would interpret that. Hopefully they're singing off the same hymn sheet. I do think the advice was correct and directionally correct. But to hear that at that point in time, that's what I'm not sure, like what's, where it's come from. Now for me, this Q3 session and the final runs in Q3 were characterized by the turn 6 and 7 chicane. I've still got my notes on the whiteboard, so let's bring them up together and have a look at them. So hopefully you can see that on the screen in front of you. These are my notes from yesterday. I'm talking about the 6 and 7 chicane drawn on the right over here. And I'm essentially saying, he who can get furthest up this entry curb is just going to have the easiest time through here. If you're slightly wide or slightly deep, that's when all of the dramas start happening on the exit. That's why Lance Stroll crashed over here. I feel like that's why Lando had some issues over here. Charles went deep into here as well. So I'm going to bring up some videos and show you. But all of the issues were under braking. And that's why I say the advice from Lando's engineer was directionally correct. Do not over push the entry to this braking zone. Focus on line, which is making contact with this first entry curb. I think there was scope and opportunity for all of the drivers to get up on that curb as much as possible. And then, it makes this really a non-event. It pretty much turns the chicane into one corner and a more straightforward exit, which was what I was looking for in this chicane. Let's bring up the video now and see what the guys are up to. So here we go. Let's have a look at the struggles that Leclerc had into here. So yeah, it's completely missed the first part. And then obviously that just makes this part a drama. Obviously, you guys know that that's a function of what happens with the entry. So what happened here? Bit of re-instability. Does he have to open the wheel a little bit? Yeah, and probably broke a little bit too late, a little bit too hard, pressed the downshifts too quickly, all the stuff we spoke about before. This is Lando into here. Again, he's missed that curb and I guess missed his point there. And then this is where, again, like we spoke about on the whiteboard, similar to Stroll, it's a function of what happens downstream of this. You guys know if I just pause here, you got to get your left front at least on the red and white curb on the left there at the very least, if not slightly higher up. I'd argue that chopping it, you pretty much want to aim for that grassy patch here, your left front to just brush up against that. So it is this sharpest point here that you want to just chop over, and that sets up your nice exit. So Lando's missed that. And then, getting on throttle hard early, but with the steering more turned than you want, picks up a bit of understeer in the middle and then just clobbers that. Well, again, under pressure, we spoke about the pressure. Now, that engineer or whoever speaking about line was correct. This is not good line from Lando. Let's have a look at George on the pole lap here. He's turning as much as possible, gives it another armful of lock, does manage to connect in ever so slightly with that curb. What I would argue then with George is there's a little bit more room. George can even get a little bit higher up than that and make life even easier. But that was better than his competitors, right? So that was a good job by George. He did speak about keeping his foot flat very early on the exit here. And so it's hard because you're carrying a lot of speed in here. So you would have to wipe off a little bit more speed to be able to make it. But that's better than nothing, guys. So that's, we're talking about the pole sitter here. So that's a good job by George relative to the others. And there's always little areas that you can improve across the lap if we are nitpicking here. But George did speak about how early and how hard he could get on throttle and how he could just go flat pretty much straight away. So George was the best job through there, I thought, from the onboards that I saw. A quick note on George while we're at it. Yes, he was on all of the right parts of the racetrack. I'm just looking at it now. But after the qualifying session, he just was speaking about the change in wind direction from yesterday to today. That's the change in conditions that I mentioned before. He said that it was a headwind into the hairpin. Let me bring up the whiteboard so you guys can see. Pretty much said that it was a headwind into the hairpin, which he was able to leverage and take advantage of. That means that you got more downforce when you're traveling through to the hairpin. You can brake later, deeper, harder. And then he was monitoring, and this is the crucial part for me, he was monitoring his top speed down, and he said that his top speed was 1.5 kilometers more than usual down the back straight due to that wind coming in this direction. And he said he had to brake a little bit earlier into turn 13. So look, this is very technically excellent from George as well. Not only is he driving the car, but he's been able to monitor the top speed live in real time to gauge how much wind he thinks is coming and how strong it is at that point in time. Most of the drivers will check the wind speed and direction just before the session and say, oh, okay, it's changed direction this session or it's strong this session. Now, George is going one step further. He's identified that it's changed direction already, but now he's monitoring it in real time with his top speed. That's pretty impressive. So he did do a mega hairpin and a conservative, but rightly conservative final corner. Remember, this is where Lando had that oversteer moment on his first run in Q3. So that was very astute of George to be able to know that and manage for it in real time. Let's have a quick look at the Russell Verstappen comparison, P1, P2 with the telemetry. And you'll notice the big delta spike here. So if I just zoom in on that area for you guys, that's where I think George did a mega job in the hairpin. So he went into this corner ever so slightly ahead, 0.005, and heading into the final chicane, 0.86. So found a couple of hundredths through there. As a result of that late braking event, you see that Aqua braking later than Max into there. So that was very good. He's driven clean past Max's braking point and braked late and hard and found a lot of time on entry. He's been able to hang on to some of that on the exit as well. So that's George leveraging that wind advantage there as well. Curious to see how they broke into the final corner. If we can, George did say he was conservative. Again, you'll see that there. That's the Aqua braking earlier than Max as well. So yeah, very good job by George to be aware of all of this and on top of all of this. I thought I'd call that out to you as a good piece of technical driving. So the Q3 results are on the screen in front of you. You'll notice that even with that mega hairpin from George, he didn't get the fastest final sector. That was held by Oscar Piastri. So There you go. But have a look at the middle sector. That's where George was taking that curb down at 6 and 7. George also did a mega 3 and 4, I thought, as well. And just on the right parts of the right racetrack. So that's what it's worth, guys. You see, in terms of lap time, to be able to just exit that corner and bury your foot, it's worth a little bit of time. I didn't get to see the likes of Max's or Oscars, but all weekend I thought that the drivers haven't really been riding that so well. I thought Lando did it best, actually, but turns out he made a mistake there in Q3. Let's have a look and see what else we got going on. Hamilton got on top of Leclerc. Obviously, Leclerc, we spoke about that error down at 6. Norris, that's a disappointing result for Norris, but he can still come through. This is going to be probably a 2-stop race. It's going to be probably high degradation, long DRS zones down that back straight. I think Lando can still make this work. This has been a good job from Alonso, Hadjar, and Albon. Again, some of the familiar names that we're starting to call out in Q3 as doing some good jobs. And Hamilton, I guess, best of the rest after the Mercedes, Red Bull, and McLaren, 11.5. I guess he'll be happy with that. I'm sure he would have wanted to compete for pole, but wasn't to be this time around. Now, looking ahead to the all-important start, guys, guess who we got on the front row? George Russell lining up against Max Verstappen. These two guys have a history, not to mention the last race. So what needs to be done? Let's jump over to the whiteboard. I'm going to show you guys because it's quite interesting. So what I've done is just on the right-hand side of the page, I've just kind of drawn the start-finish straight. Now, what's interesting is as they come out of the final corner, final chicane, and let's say the start-finish line is somewhere over here, then all the cars seem to be running down this side of the track, the right-hand side of the track. Whereas George's pole position grid slot, if I just draw it in red, is over here. And then you got Max P2. So this will be Russ on this side, and this will be Verstappen on that side. So there are opportunities for both drivers here. I mean, normally we say pole position wants to shoot across to the inside, cover and maintain, but that's starting from the clean side. Obviously, you've got the luxury to be able to do that. You're starting on the dirty side. George Russell on pole starting on the dirty side. There's not much he can do. He just needs a good launch and he needs to get here first, get to the apex first, so that if Max is attacking around the outside, George can then, he needs to like run Max out of road here, because what Max is going to do is form an attack around the outside. And as you can see from your track map, an attack around the outside of 1 is actually the inside into 2 as well. So if Max just gets a good launch and can get side by side or slightly ahead of George into turn 1, for sure he's going to be having a look around the outside of 1 up the inside of turn 2. That's the story that I'll be looking out for at the start of this Grand Prix. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you learned something from this video and enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a comment in the comments section below. And if you're new here, subscribe to this channel because I'll be putting out a race analysis moving forward. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.